Today we're going to talk about why you should consider looking at an artist's signature guitar. One such example that I love and will be referencing today when needed is my Mark Tremonti Signature PRS SE. This guitar suits a lot of my needs. Playability-wise, aesthetically, just overall a fantastic guitar. And I have a full video review of this. If you want to go check that out, I'll leave a link in the cards up there. Now, while this guitar is perfect for me in a lot of ways, you still got to remember it's modeled after someone else's preferences. I mean, all guitars are somewhat modeled after someone else's preferences, I guess. But signature guitars usually have off-the-cuff or like weird things about them that you might not find on the stock version of these guitars. So with that in mind, let's take a look at 5 reasons you should consider owning an artist's signature guitar. Number 1, you're a fan of the artist or the band that they play in. So this one's probably the most obvious point, so I'm gonna go ahead and get it out of the way first. You wouldn't necessarily go out of your way and be first in line to buy something from somebody that you didn't like or support. If you're not a fan of the artist or the band or the songs they write or whatever the case may be, chances are you're not gonna look at that guitar player and say, yeah, I wanna sound just like him. I will say, however, if things are to be believed and nothing's changed since this video's gone live, I've heard talk of a Chad Kroeger from Nickelback 7-string Gibson Explorer, possibly a signature model. I'm not a fan of Nickelback, and that's not me saying it to jump on the bandwagon of everybody else that's saying they're not a fan of Nickelback because Nickelback. But I've seen what people are talking about, and yeah, I'd own that thing in a heartbeat. Agufish actually did a video where he talked about it a couple weeks ago as of recording this video. If you're curious, I'll leave a link in the description. Anyway, generally speaking, if you're a fan of a guitar player, you look up to them and you want to play and sound like them, you know, all that kind of stuff, you're gonna try and get as close to what they actually play as possible. And how much closer can you get than a guitar that's literally spec'd to their liking? Number 2, unique finishes and features. Color, neck profile, fretboard radius, fretboard color, or a grip built into the guitar in the case of the Ibanez Gem. Features that you either can't find on a standard production model similar to the Signature, or that if you bought it and tried to do those things to it, it would just be a hassle. Let me put it to you this way. How easy do you think it would be to put your own monkey grip into a guitar? Unless you're pretty handy with a saw, most people won't be able to do that. Or how easy do you think it would be to buy a stock model with a fat neck and then, you know, file it down to a thin neck just because that's what your favorite artist plays? Or just like refinishing a guitar to make it look like theirs. I mean, if they have a production model of a Signature that you want, and you want that look and sound, just buy that Signature model. Number 3, collectibles or limited edition guitars. So if you buy guitars just because you like them, maybe you're not necessarily a player, maybe more of a collector, there's nothing inherently wrong with that, right? Buy what you like, collect what you like. Unless you're buying them and in vastly inflating prices on the rare or limited edition pieces as soon as they're released, then you're just kind of being an asshole. But that apparently comes with the territory with buying things that can be considered collectible items, and guitars are certainly up there in that category. But seriously, buying a Signature guitar, especially a higher end Signature guitar, especially if it's a limited run, it can pay off in the future big time. Guitars are a big game, and if you play it correctly, they can be worth a lot of money. And then obviously if you manage to find a guitar that was actually played or owned by that artist, that'll fetch a pretty penny too. So if you're in the investment game, consider looking at a high-end Signature guitar, or maybe try to find one that a famous artist owned. Number 4, Signatureception. I like the title of this point. I came up with it myself, not to brag. And this may seem like a confusing point, but you'll know exactly what I'm talking about here in just a second. A signature within a signature. It's an interesting concept, isn't it? Take, for example, the Les Paul. We all know and love it, and we know tons of famous people that play them, and even have their own signature versions of a Les Paul. And the argument there is, how can you have a signature Les Paul? That was the guitar that was built for Les Paul. It was named after him. That's his signature. It's already a signature guitar. Yada, 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 yada. And while that technically may be true, you can always change something about it, give it your own signature spin, add something to it, take something away from it, and then you have a signature guitar. And while everyone's different, there's only so many combinations of pickups and neck shapes and tops and colors and wood types and electronics and fretboards and so on and so forth that you can have with a guitar. So don't let anybody tell you that you can't go out and buy a Les Paul that's a signature for somebody other than Les Paul. Buy a Buckethead, buy a Slash, buy a Jared James Nichols Epiphone. For the love of God, buy a Jared James Nichols Epiphone. They are so good. And number 5, it suits your style. Looks aside, if you pick up a guitar looking for a specific sound or a specific weight or a specific neck shape or whatever, and it hits the mark and it just so happens to be a signature model of someone else's guitar, then so be it. Going back to my PRS, I mean, it's Mark Tremonti. I play rock and metal, he plays rock and metal. I like single cuts, so does Mark. And it's heavy. It's another thing that I like about it. This has hot pickups. And I mean, it screams. I like it. It gets me the sounds I'm looking for that I can't get with other guitars, and it suits me to a T. And that's before even factoring in the fact that this top, I love it. Now granted, I could just as easily pick up my Strat or my SG and get some killer distorted tones out of it, but when I need that hot and heavy sound, not that hot and heavy sound, I tend to gravitate to my PRS. Plus, in a weird way, it's kind of cool to see how Mark likes his guitar set up and built and all that kind of stuff. So there's that other little tidbit. A little insight into one of my favorite guitar players' minds. So that's it. Did I miss anything? What are your thoughts on signature guitars? Leave me a comment and let me know. I love reading you guys' comments. Make sure you're subscribed, like the video, all the good YouTube stuff, and check the links in the description for my Teespring and Redbubble store if you want to go pick up some merch, and I'll catch you in the next one.